Professional solutions to money, relationships, wellness, and more. Shine a light onto your day and into your life. Power Your Life with Dr. Joanne White.
Welcome to Power Your Life. I'm Joanne White, your host, and my first guest has gone behind the lens, photographing some of the most famous faces in the world, from U.S. presidents to A-list stars, and recently capturing Bon Jovi on tour in a new book titled Bon Jovi Work. Photojournalist David Bergman. Hello, welcome.
Hey, Joanne, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. This is a masterpiece, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful photos, and there's something that you do, which is with Gigapan, right? That
Yes.
just does something amazing, and tell us about that, because you've kind of introduced it to me, and
Sure.
I'm amazed at what we see.
Yeah, so before this tour, that's something that I had done at a number of different events. You know how you can already take two overlapping photos and put them together to make a larger photo? Well, this Gigapan system, helps me to make these giant panoramic photos made up of hundreds of images. So I took that technology to different events, the first one being President Obama's inauguration. And I put it online, and you can zoom into the photo, and it's so high res that you can actually see individual faces in the crowd. And you know, there were 2 million people there.
Right.
It was obviously one of the biggest events of our generation.
And they loved it because they're able to, there I am, look at that, and that's very exciting for all the audience.
Exactly. I've gone on to do this at Super Bowls and Olympics and World Series, and basically, if you're at the event, you can prove that you were there. Sometimes people say they were at an event and the place holds 25,000 and 100,000 people say they were there. So now you can actually prove it if you were there.
There I was.
Exactly.
See there.
Exactly.
So that's great, and it's kind of like your signature almost.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've used throughout my career. It's been good.
Talking about your career, you started tour photography, which is something that you love from talking with you. And you started with Gloria Estefan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was a staff photographer at the Miami Herald. I was a newspaper photographer throughout the 90s. And Gloria Estefan was on tour. She had just come back from a major bus accident, and they never thought she was going to walk again.
Right.
And she came back to tour again, and she was fine. So for the newspaper, I pitched my editors to let me go out on the road with her. I always kind of had this fantasy of going on a tour bus and being on the road with a major concert tour. And to my delight, they said, go ahead and do it. So I pitched it to the Estefans, and they let me do it. So I spent a little bit of time out on the road with them and had all access and went backstage and was on the bus with them and their kids, you know, with the family. And that kind of cemented my love of tour photography.
Because of the travel, or what aspect?
It's really everything. It's definitely a lifestyle that's not for everybody, because you're in a different city every day. You do a show, you pack it up, and then you get on the tour bus and you go to the next city. But I love that environment of the live show. There's
the excitement,
there's
the
an energy to it that you really don't get very many places. And to be able to walk into an empty arena or a stadium where there's nothing there in the morning and watch the crew just build up literally the excitement and the stage and everything that goes into it, and then it culminates with the show, and then they pack it all up in the trucks and we move on to the next city.
That's incredible.
I really enjoy that.
This book it goes with you and Bon Jovi and his band through several years of touring. What was one of the highlights of your experience?
You know, early on,
as a photographer.
Yeah, early on in 2010, you know, I was given this unprecedented access by John and the band to go anywhere I wanted, which really is unheard of, and that's because of the level of trust that I really was able to get with them. And we were at the first night in the new Meadowlands Stadium, as it was called then. This was in 2010, and they were going to be shooting off some fireworks during one part of the show, and I knew the picture had to be from on the stage. So I sort of hid, because I try not to distract the band when they're on stage. Obviously, that's sort of a sacred place. But I sort of hid. I literally laid down on the back of the stage, and when the fireworks started going off, I just popped up and I stood there, and I'm pretty much 10 feet behind John Bon Jovi and 55,000 people, and I just snapped away. And at that moment, I'm really only thinking about exposure and composition.
Right, you're a photographer,
of course. And I make the pictures, and it's maybe a minute or two that I was up there, and then I ran off the stage, and you kind of sit back from it and you go, holy cow, that was unbelievable. I was literally just basically standing in front of 55,000 people. So I went on to do that many times with the band, but that was really the first time, and it was a pretty emotional moment for me to be able to do that.
That's pretty amazing
Yeah.
too. You have an experience when Bon Jovi actually hurt his meniscus, and he had to have surgery, and you were in Ireland at the time, right? Ireland?
Yeah, so he tore the meniscus on his left knee during a show in Helsinki, Finland. And then I obviously documented that, and as he came off stage, I was right there. I sort of went back into my old journalism roots to
Right.
just document it. You don't know what you're going to do with the photos at the time, if you'll ever
But they're
put
in
them
there
out.
too.
But yeah, and he rehabbed it over the next couple of weeks. He had acupuncture on his knee in his hotel room, and I documented all of this.
And you were wearing what are they called?
Well- Then he had the surgery
hospital?
in
Right.
Ireland, yes, and I was in the operating room wearing the scrubs,
scrubs,
with
right.
the mask and the whole thing, and I had my cameras out, and I was actually, documenting him. He was unconscious, one of the biggest rock stars in the world, and I was in the room taking pictures. It was pretty insane. And then he was very kind to let us put it in the book.
Right, because that could be very private and so
It really
sacred.
is. I mean, when we were shooting it, he would always jokingly say, they'll do a book after I'm dead, figuring nobody would ever see them. But when we started putting the book together and decided on this title, Work, it's really about the band's work ethic and the hard work they put into everything that they do. They're still 30 years later performing at a very high level in front of
Right,
100,000 people and playing for 2.5 and 3 hours a night.
And David Berman, so are you. Thank you so much for being here, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Do you wonder what the economic state of our country or the world will be like this year? Up next, the amazing Kreskin will give his predictions for 2015 when Power Your Life returns.